Madam Secretary, I believe we have a quorum on
Yes, we
this
do, Mr. Chairman.
absolutely beautiful day, and so please begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, August 22nd, 2016. This is a City Planning Commission review session, and a quorum is present. The first item on the agenda is a proposed zoning map amendment to establish a C22 district over an existing R31 district to facilitate a public parking garage. And our presenter is Stephen Everett of the Queen's Office.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Idle Lots LLC filed an application to rezone a portion of one block located at the intersection of 227th Street and 145th Road. This is in the Brookville neighborhood of Queens Community District 13. It would facilitate the development of a public parking lot of approximately 27 spaces, and the Commission will be familiar with this proposal. The applicant previously filed an application on October 9th of 2015 for an identical zoning map change action. It was withdrawn, however, on June 23rd of this year, prior to the vote by the City Planning Commission. The project area is located in an R31 zoning district, established in 2004 as a result of the city planning-sponsored Brookville rezoning. Prior to 2004, the area was zoned R32. The project area consists of two tax lots located within block 13484. Lot 1, which is the corner lot at the intersection of 227th Street and 145th Road, is approximately 10,000 square feet in area. Lot 36, with frontage on 145th Road, is approximately 2,000 square feet in area. East of the project area, the block is developed with two-family residences with frontage on 145th Road. North of the project area, the block is developed with a DEP-owned former Jamaica water supply above-ground storage tank on a 48,000 square foot lot. The tank has been decommissioned and would not be impacted by the proposed action. There are currently no known plans to open that facility again. The surrounding area is characterized primarily by residential and manufacturing uses within a 600-foot radius. On the southwest side of 145th Road is an entire block and a portion of another block in an M11 zoning district, improved with commercial warehouse buildings owned by the applicant. The block located to the east of the project area here is zoned R31 with a portion of the block containing a C13 overlay, improved with one-story attached buildings, including a deli, a beauty salon, and a house of worship. The remainder of the 600-foot radius around the project area, west of 227th Street and north of 146th Road, is located in an R31 zoning district predominantly characterized by one- and two-family residential buildings. So south of the project area, there are three warehouses owned by the applicant. The applicant acquired the two buildings on the western block, which is 13474, in 2012 and has since renovated them. One is occupied by a Verizon garage used for the storage of operations and truck equipment. The other is a warehouse with 5 logistics and freight forwarding businesses. And the logistics facility, located on the east side of 227th Street, was completed in 2014. It is fully occupied with an additional 5 logistics and freight forwarding facilities and provides all required parking on the site. So again, the Commission will be familiar with the site history of this project area. In 2015, the applicant professionally certified permits with DOB to install a sidewalk along 227th Street, clean and regrade the lot, and control stormwater runoff by installing a drainage system, including catch basin and dry wells. The site was also paved with asphalt and striped for parking, and a curb cut was installed on 145th Road. After city planning notified DOB of potential misuse of this project area, DOB issued ECB violations in February 2016 for work without a permit, illegal use in a residential district, and use of a lot without a valid certificate of occupancy. And in May of 2016, Department of Buildings issued a 4th violation for continued use of the property without a certificate of occupancy. After the City Planning Commission public hearing for the previously filed application, the applicant submitted an affidavit and photograph showing that the parking lot is now padlocked and no longer in use, and that the cars were previously parked on the site have been moved to one of the blocks to the south that is also applicant-owned. The applicant subsequently withdrew that application on June 23rd. And with respect to the current application, I visited the site last Monday and can confirm that this is In fact, the existing condition, it's been padlocked, it's not in use. The gate shown here along 140th Road is, in fact, still padlocked. So the applicant proposes one zoning map change, which would be a rezoning from R31 to R31C22 to establish a commercial overlay at a block depth of 100 feet and a width of 120 feet, the extents of the project area. The C22 commercial overlay allows a maximum FAR of 1.0 for both commercial and community facility uses. The maximum building height is governed by a sky exposure plane, which begins 30 feet above the street line. And because of the expansion of uses in rezoning from residential to commercial, this site could be developed with a building of approximately 5,100 square feet with on-site parking of approximately 17 spaces. So though the rezoning would allow a development of such a commercial use, the applicants propose a public parking lot of approximately 27 spaces located on both lots 1 and 36, the entirety of the project area. Public parking lots are allowed as of right in the C2 district at a maximum capacity of 150 cars. The site plan shown here is illustrative and would require Department of Buildings approval, but it would be intended for public off-street parking purposes and would be open to everyone on a first-come, first-served basis with operating hours of 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. It would be accessed by an approximately 27-foot wide curb cut on 145th Road, the curb cut that exists now. And it's intended to reduce the number of on-street parking spaces otherwise occupied on surrounding residential streets. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. This should be quite familiar to all of you. Any questions for Stephen? Mr. Knuckles.
I'm just curious, Stephen. Is the owner going to sublet the operation of the parking lot, or will it be operated by the owners?
It's intended to be operated by the owners, to my knowledge. I can confirm that. But, for example, at the public hearing previously, there was concern that there were cars parked here that had been sublet under a lease agreement. And those are the cars that have been moved to another portion of applicant-owned property. So I believe this will be entirely operated by the owners, but I can confirm.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Ortiz.
And my recollection is that there was something related to the leasehold agreements that we had a question with, are these spaces connected to an existing lease?
So these are not. Those approximately 12 cars that were 12 spaces that were leased previously, the applicant in the previous application provided testimony that those cars had been moved to this lot right here. So they are no longer leased for the proposed parking lot now.
Okay, so the idea is that potentially there could be overnight parking from residents here as well?
The operating hours are 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Also no overnight parking?
I assume not, but I can confirm.
Okay.
Miss,
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. Marin.
Stephen, question. Good afternoon, Stephen. So last time this application was presented to us, an argument was made that the parking was actually tied to a lease on one of the logistics buildings, and there was not enough space in parking to facilitate those spots at the logistics building, but they needed the second lot, the other lot, to accommodate the requirement of the leasehold that they were committed to. The application has since been withdrawn, the application has come back, and now, am I to understand that this lot is no longer tied to the leasehold? None of those folks will be parking there, and this is now just an open parking lot that's owned by the owner that wants to operate a public facility?
Yes. We are to understand at this time with this application, those spaces are not leased particularly for one of the tenants of those logistics facilities, but it will be open to everyone, so presumably they could park in this lot just as any member of the public could also.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
Any other questions for Stephen? Okay, certified.
Let's now advance to item number 2, page 12, proposed minor modification to a previously approved authorization to facilitate enlargement to the Horace Mann School campus in the Bronx. Now, our presenter is Jutan Horseman of the Bronx office.
Good afternoon. So this application by Horace Mann is to facilitate the expansion of its upper school campus. The campus expansion would include the construction of a new science center, new aquatic center, and entry into the existing gym and maintenance building. To facilitate the development, Horace Mann is requesting minor modifications to an authorization for their existing large scale, to adjust the boundaries of the large scale, and to allow the use of unused floor area on the campus. The Horace Mann School is a not-for-profit private school that has been operating in New York for over 100 years. It was founded in 1887 as a co-ed experimental and developmental unit of Teachers College, part of Columbia University. The upper school campus was originally located in Manhattan and moved to its current location in 1912. Since that time, Horace Mann has consolidated its elementary, middle, and high school operations in the Riverdale area. Its 18-acre campus is located on 3 contiguous lots, referred to as the upper and middle school campus here, the lower school campus here, and the 4-acre field here. The campus is located in the Fieldston section of Riverdale within Bronx Community District 8. The area contains predominantly single-family homes to the west and south within the Fieldston neighborhood. South is West 246th Street, which has the lower school and Manhattan College to the south. To the east is Broadway and Van Cortlandt Park. There is a large grade change from Broadway going west up to the campus. And then splitting the site is Tibbet Avenue to the west and West 250th Street to the north. The Horace Mann School currently has approximately 1,790 students in nursery school through 12th grade. The large-scale boundaries include the upper school, middle school, and 4-acre field, and a small portion of the lower campus here. The red outline indicates the large-scale boundaries. The 1 train is located here, just to the south. The majority of the large scale is within the R4 zoning district, which permits lower density residential. To the east is an R6 along Broadway, and it has a C22 commercial overlay and contains a number of commercial uses. Across Tibbet is an R12 zoning district with a low density residential. This is also the boundary of the Special Natural Area District. Though the large scale is within the Special Natural Area District, this application is not subject to the natural area, as there are no modifications within the natural area district. The existing large scale is made up of Tillinghast Hall here, which contains theater, entry, library, classroom, administrative offices. Forsheimer and Rose Hall, which is science, labs, and classrooms. Fisher Hall, which is classrooms, cafeteria, and a theater. And the existing Prettyman Gym. In the middle are a number of fields: baseball, softball, football, soccer, and then there's a number of tennis courts to the north. The large scale was established by the Commission in 2001 to permit the construction of a new theater, entry, and library to the south here, part of Tillinghast Hall, without regard to front yard requirements, height, or setback. You can see a couple of cross sections here and how they correspond with the height and setback waivers, and then the setback from the front yard line for the theater. The large scale encompasses an area of just under 700,000 square feet and a total of just over 1.1 million square feet of development potential, which would be permitted on the main campus within the large scale. In 2007, the City Planning Commission approved the demapping and disposition of portions of Post Road, which was located here, just north of West 246th Street. The applicant is seeking to incorporate this 9,392 square foot area into their large scale. As part of the deed agreement, this area does not generate any FAR and cannot be built on, but by incorporating it, it will clean up the boundaries of the large scale. There are a number of parking spaces that are split partially within and outside the large scale that it will help clean up. So you can see this is the existing boundary of the red, and then in the next slide, the proposed where the large scale boundary would be modified to. As part of its master plan, Horace Mann determined that its physical education and athletic complex is outdated and unable to meet its current needs. The middle and upper division science space is insufficient for current programs and expanded course offerings. There's a need for classrooms, a campus center, and with meeting and gathering spaces and improved maintenance facilities. These improvements are necessary to meet the needs of its existing student population and are not designed to increase the school's capacity. To fulfill the goals of its master plan, Horace Mann proposes the construction of approximately 86,500 square feet. So to zoom in on the northern portion, which is where all the development is occurring. So this is the existing Prettyman Gym. Just to the west is a proposed 4-story, 55,000 square foot building, which would be the new science laboratory and student activity center. Just to the north would be the new 22,000 square foot aquatic center, which would be a pool and other rec space. Combining Fisher Hall and Prettyman Gym would be a 4,500 square foot vestibule, and a 5,000 square foot maintenance building would be located here to replace one that was currently in this area that needs to be demolished for the new building. Other changes include demolition of 2 buildings which are located in this area, which would be replaced with parking, tennis courts, and then the modification of the tennis courts, and renovation of the existing Prettyman Gym and Forsheimer Hall, which is located here, which currently contains the science facilities, which would move to the new science building. Here's a rendering of the new 4-story, 55,000 square foot science building. Today, the large scale is using about 25% of their 1.1 million square foot development potential. With 86,500 square foot addition, they go to about 30%. So to reiterate, the Horace Mann School is requesting minor modifications to their existing large scale to adjust the boundaries to incorporate the previously demapped post road to clean up their large scale boundaries, to allow the use of 86,500 square feet of unused floor area on Horace Mann's upper campus, to modify the previously approved site plan, to build the science building, the aquatic center, the vestibule, the maintenance building, and to modify some of the rest of the site. The proposed project would comply with all yard, height, and bulk controls, and no additional waivers would be required beyond those granted in 2001, which were required. Thank you.
Thanks, Juton. Questions? Ms. Efron.
Thank you. The maintenance shed is 5,000 square feet. What size is the current one that would be treated for that? And is it going to store vehicles, or is it just equipment? It seems like a very large shed on the eastern edge of the campus.
I can find out exactly what it would store and how big the previous shed. I don't have that number with me, so I can get that information.
Thank
for
you.
Any other questions for Juton? Hearing none, this will be referred out to Community Board 8 for 45 days, and we will see it upon its return.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juton.
Let's now move to item number 3, page 36. It's proposed notice of intent to acquire office space for the Agency for Children's Services at 1775 Grand Concourse in the Bronx. And I'd like to introduce Justin Lamarella, who's making his very first presentation before the commission. We're at item number 3, page 36.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is an application by the Administration for Children's Services for an office space acquisition located at 1775 Grand Concourse in the Bronx within Community District 5. The proposal is to acquire 11,000 square feet of office space on the 8th floor of 1775 Grand Concourse for ACS's Division of Early Care and Education. The building site, located here, is zoned R8, which allows for mid to high density residential with an FAR up to 7.2 and a community facility FAR up to 6.5. 1775 Grand Concourse is located along the Grand Concourse and is partially included in the Special Grand Concourse Preservation District, which was created in 1989 to protect the distinctive Art Deco composition and scale of the apartment buildings along the corridor. Although it is zoned residential, the site is one of 17 commercial infill sites, which allow for continued commercial use as designated by the special district. The building was originally built for New York Telephone Company and is currently occupied by tenants such as Con Edison, Bronx Lebanon Hospital, and the New York City Law Department. The New York City Department of City Planning Bronx Borough Office will be moving there within the year, and an office space acquisition approved by this commission in August of 2015. The building is located along the 174th, 175th subway stop of the B&D line, and the number 4 subway line runs 2 blocks to the west along Jerome Avenue. The building is 8 stories tall, however, the facade along the Grand Concourse measures only 5 stories tall due to a grade change and is 8 stories from East 175th and Walton Avenue. This shows the Grand Concourse facade, and this is from the rear from Walton Avenue. The building can be accessed from both Walton Avenue and the Grand Concourse, and the Grand Concourse entrance is ADA accessible. Each floor has new code-compliant ADA accessible restrooms, and the new space will also be ADA compliant. The space will be used by ACS's Division of Early Care and Education, Bronx Resource Area. The Bronx Resource Area is a borough-based office that works with contracted child care service programs and voucher families to verify and recertify the eligibility of every family receiving ACS subsidy. Based on current operations, there will be about 40 visitors per day, and there will be approximately 37 staff on site, which is similar to their current operations. They are currently located at 416 Willis Avenue, but due to the landlord offering only a 10-year lease renewal at a higher rate and with no extension, they are seeking new office space. The space is currently vacant and will require a full build-out, and it has been determined that the space is of sufficient size to meet the agency needs. Therefore, the requested action, notice of intent to acquire office space, will help to facilitate the relocation of ACS's Division of Early Care and Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Knight.
Do we know how much space they're moving from at 416 Willis?
I believe that their current space is around 12,000 square feet, but they're able to fit the same operations within the 11,000 square feet.
Ms. Ortiz. Any other questions? Okay, this will be on for hearing on Wednesday. Thanks.
Let's now go to item number 4, page 45, proposed zoning text amendment to remove Community District 10 in Brooklyn from the applicability of an existing BSA special permit, which Richard Jacobs will talk to us about. We're on item number 4, page 45.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod, Commissioners. This is the pre-hearing post-referral follow-up for a zoning text amendment to a Board of Standards and Appeals special permit, ZR 73-622, enlargement of single and two-family detached and semi-detached residences. Community Board 10 as applicant is proposing the removal of Community District 10 from its current applicability under the existing regulations. The special permit currently applies to 3 full community districts, Community Districts 10, 11, and 15, and a specific R2 area in CD 14. Removing CD 10 from the special permit would require future enlargements of single and two-family homes in CD 10 to adhere to the as-of-right zoning regulations or rely on pre-established discretionary remedies to afford relief. Community District 10 is one of 18 community districts located in the southwest portion of the borough. Approximately 50% of the community district is located within the Special Bay Ridge District. You see from that shaded area from the midpoint to the west. You'll recall that CD10 believes that the original intent of the special permit, allowing existing residents relief from non-compliances, providing for limited enlargement in order to remain within their community, has been misapplied and is no longer necessary. They describe in their application how since its adoption by the City Council in February of 1998, only 21 applications have been made within the community district. Of those 21 applications, 10, or approximately half, were disapproved by Community Board 10. Of those disapproved, all were approved by the Board of Standards and Appeals. And this map just illustrates the location of the approvals in green and red, the disapprovals by the Community Board. You can see they're fairly spread out throughout the district. Community Board 10 members contend that in practice, a special permit has been predominantly used to legalize existing illegal conditions or to produce luxury housing for speculative sale or purchase. They further contend that the lower density and contextual districts mapped extensively by the Department of City Planning in 2005 and 2007 for some 400 blocks. Map, when the initial text was supported and approved, more than adequately provide the fine-grained zoning controls to enlarge residences in keeping with the built form and character of most blocks. CB10 believes that future enlargements should adhere to the as-of-right residential regulations, proceed with established relief either by BSA special permit or an alternative special permit which permits enlargements up to 10%. You'll recall in your package, there are some examples. This example shows a vertical enlargement, some increase of 20% over FAR, very close to the adjacent house, whereas normally there's 8 feet between homes. As there's no cap on the FAR, in this case, it's a 70% increase above what's permitted. You can see it's more than an enlargement, it's a total reconstruction. And the last example shows an enlargement both in the front, the side, and it's hard to see, but in the rear, it's not in character with the streetscape. After a 45-day referral by the Planning Commission, the Community Board held a public hearing on June 15th. They didn't take a formal vote on the application, as it's already evidence instead of the applicant that they support the application. What they chose to do was to submit a letter to the Planning Commission with backup, including their Land Use Committee report, a description of their extensive outreach effort, which included some 6,000 pieces of mail to practitioners, local residents in the vicinity of these special permits, and community groups. And they reported on the overwhelming support of the community, both in the verbal and written testimony at the hearing. There were over 100 people in attendance, some 19 speakers in favor, only 2 in opposition. The Brooklyn Borough President held a public hearing on July 28th. There were 9 speakers in support and 1 in opposition, and the Borough President recommended approval without conditions. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Ms. Efron?
Thank you. In the Borough President's recommendation, there was reference to 4 applications that are currently in the process. As a matter of law, what happens to those if this gets approved?
Of those 4 applications, 1 was actually approved by the BSA and the Community Board. There are 2 that are currently pending, and there's a 4th that's being contemplated for filing. The council member, who will be here on Wednesday to testify along with the Community Board, has publicly mentioned at both hearings that he would entertain the possibility of some sort of vesting provision, and he'll be able to elaborate on that further at the hearing on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Richard? Hearing none, we'll have a public hearing on Wednesday. Thank you, Richard.
Let's now move to item number 5, 2 applications with respect to establishing C13 overlays on property zone R5 and R41, respectively, to facilitate commercial and mixed-use development. Our presenter is Scott Solomon of the Queen's Office. We're on item number 5, page 158.
Good afternoon. This is an application for a proposed zoning change to tax block 15620, lots 1 and 11, from R5 to R5 C13, facilitate the development of a 1-story commercial building. This is a proposal for a lot in the Far Upper neighborhood in Queens Community District 14. This site, the Beach 13th Street site along Seagirt Boulevard, it's about a half-mile west of the Nassau border. Seagirt is the primary west-east arterial between Rockaway Expressway to the west and Nassau Expressway to the east. Immediately to the south is the Rockaway beaches. Over here, the boardwalk has been repaired post-Sandy. Pre-Sandy, there were massive renovations to the handball courts, basketball courts, a large lawn, and a nice baseball little league field. In 2008, there was a city-sponsored Rockaway rezoning. This did not affect this lot. It remained a R5 zoning district. The spirit of the 2008 rezoning was to maintain the character and scale of the neighborhood, but also promote retail and housing opportunities. The 17,373 square foot vacant lot is located here, bounded by Hasten Road to the north, Seagirt Boulevard to the south, and Beach 13th Street to the west. You will see the R4 zoning district here and the R5 predominant zoning district here. The R4, R5 districts are characterized by low to medium scale residential building, many 1-2 family housing here and multifamily housing around here. Moving to some site photos. On photo 1, top left, is viewing east from Beach 13th Street towards the development site. It's vacant, but it's well maintained and is currently occupied just by grass and a perimeter fence along the entire lot. Photo 2 on the right is showing from the southwest the proposed site from Hasten Road. Photo 3 is looking south towards Seagirt Boulevard and the Rockaway Beach and Boardwalk to the south. And photo 4 is looking west towards the R41 district with the 1 to 2 family houses. Here is a site plan of the Beach 13th Street site. On the western portion of the site is a 6,393 square foot commercial building with the 16 required parking spaces. The remainder of the lot will be occupied by landscaping. Here is a rendering for illustrative purposes only, indicating the commercial building, one-story commercial building on the left. This is an elevation of the property. The first finished floor will be 1 foot above the base flood elevation and will be built at the design flood elevation. All mechanical equipment will be located above the roof of the building for any flood prevention. As per the proposed requested action, it is from an R5 to an R5 with a C13. This is to facilitate the proposed development. Per the applicant, the site is an appropriate location for along a major boulevard to support local traffic. The maximum FAR for the commercial use is 1.0. On July 6, 24 votes for, 5 against, 4 abstained in support of recommending approval for this application. The board, Queens Community Board 14. The borough president held their public hearing on August 18th, pending her recommendation. And that is the end of that first site.
So, as you will recall, these are 2 separate, unconnected applications. The only connection to them is that they have common owner and they are traveling together. So, for convenience, Scott will present both of them and then can ask questions about one or both, either one or both.
Sure. Thank you. The next site is located approximately a half-mile west of the Beach 13th site, called the Fernside Place site. This is a proposed zoning map change of tax block 15784, lot 1 and 11, from R41 to R5, that's just lot 1. That is a typo. To R5 C13 to facilitate construction of a 1-story commercial building and a 5-story residential building. Again, it's approximately a half-mile west of the other site. It's approximately a quarter-mile north of the Rockaway Beach and Boardwalk, and a quarter-mile southeast of the A station stop at 25th Street. Also located along Seagirt Boulevard, the major east-west arterial in the area. It is currently an R41 district, which allows 0.25 FAR and with an additional 20% bonus for the attic. In addition to the other site, unlike the other site, this was impacted became an R41, changed to an R5. This proposal is essentially an extension of the existing R5 district over here into the proposed development site. Here is a land use map showing the 30,000 square foot irregular shaped vacant lot, also proposed to be C13, but with the R41 district. This also indicates the proposed zoning district with the commercial overlay, 100 feet in depth indicated here. It is bounded by Washington Court to the north, Burnside to the east, Seagirt to the south, and 55 feet southeasterly of Highland Place over here. These are site photos. The first photo is looking west onto the development site with the R41 district to the west with the existing 1 to 2 family housing. Photo 2 is looking south onto the development site with Seagirt Boulevard in the background. Photo 3 is looking from the southeast corner up into the development site. And photo 4 is looking from the development site towards an existing C13 commercial overlay, which is currently occupied by a laundromat. The site plan indicated in this drawing illustrates the 1-story, 5,629 square foot commercial building on the southern portion, which will have access and egress only from Seagirt Boulevard. The 5-story, 40-foot residential building, approximately 30,000 square feet, will have access to and from only watching court to the north. The lobby is indicated in gray, however, this bold black line indicates the entire footprint of the building. It will be raised on columns above the majority of the parking, 29 spaces above the 85% requirement for the residential property here, 14 spaces, the required amount for the commercial property there. Here is a rendering for illustrative purposes only of the commercial property here and the 5-story residential building here. The residential units will only be located in floors 2 through 4, with the lobby located underneath. This is an elevation illustration showing both the residential building on the upper portion and the commercial on the lower. The residential building will have its finished floor elevation built 8 feet above the design flood elevation and 9 feet above the base flood elevation. The first floor lobby will be built at the design flood elevation. On July 6th, the community board recommended approval with a vote of 31 for, 3 opposed, 4 abstentions, with no conditions. The R41 to R5, C13 is, in the applicant's opinion, to be an appropriate use for the property to bring commercial and residential opportunities to the area in the spirit of the 2008 rezoning. This indicates the change and the essential extension of the R5 rezoning. And that concludes that portion.
And we are awaiting the borough president's
Yeah, she held a meeting on
recommendation as well.
the 18th, and I'm expecting it either today or tomorrow.
Okay, questions for Scott? Commissioner Efron.
Thank you. I'm assuming we're not mapping MIH because it's too small.
It's
Correct.
not that it's too small, it's that R5 are not mapped for MIH.
MIH is mapped in R6.
R6 and
And
above.
above.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how widespread the community board outreach was for the public hearing, since it looks as if a good number of residential homes will have their view of the ocean blocked.
There would be a few houses in the rear. They reached out to the Deerfield Civic Association, represents this site specifically, and they provided their support in a letter to the applicant and to the department. The local assembly member, Goldvetter, provided his support.
Okay.
And
we'll hear from the borough president.
absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions to Scott? Do we know who's going to be here to testify on Wednesday?
The applicant's representative will be here.
Community board? No?
I will reach out to community board and find out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Public hearing Wednesday.
Let's now advance to item number 6, page 224, Manhattan pre-hearing application with respect to proposed zoning map amendment to establish a C15 commercial overlay within an existing R7A district to facilitate the legalization of an existing supermarket. And our presenter is Beverly Talavera from the Manhattan office. Item number 6, page 224.
Good afternoon, Commission members. The applicant, 1968 Lexington Avenue, 1968 Second Avenue, I'm sorry, Realty LLC is requesting a zoning map amendment from an R7A to an R7A C15 zoning district. The proposed zoning map amendment would correct 2 zoning issues. First, it would end an existing nonconformance in commercial space by providing and bringing the use into conformance with the extension of the C15 commercial overlay. Second, the requested action would also bring an existing loading dock into compliance with the zoning resolution by relocating the boundary line of the overlay from 100 feet to 155 feet. The zoning change map in front of you, to the left is the existing, and to the right is the proposed. The site is located on the east side of Second Avenue between East 101st and East 102nd Street, and the site is also situated on part of lots 1 and 6 on block 1673. Currently on site is a 2-story commercial building with a mezzanine, cellar, and loading dock, which is located on East 101st Street. The second floor of the building contains vacant office space and the supermarket on the ground floor, which uses portions of the mezzanine, cellar, and loading dock. The subject zoning lot was originally comprised of 5 separate zoning lots. Each lot was formerly occupied by a commercial building. The tax lots were merged by the recording of the zoning lot declaration in 1998, and the pre-existing building was demolished, and the building currently on site was built in 1994. The current applicant didn't own the property at the time of demolition or construction, but purchased the building as it exists in 2005. Lot 1 is completely occupied by 1968 Second Avenue. The building is 34 feet 6 inches tall and contains approximately 29,990 square feet. The loading dock is located 125 feet from Second Avenue, and the commercial overlay only extends 100 feet into the block. Lot 6 occupies most of the block and is mostly comprised of New York City Housing Authority's Metro North Plaza development, which is comprised of 7 8-story buildings. The extension of the C15 commercial overlay would extend 55 feet into the R7A zoning district and give the loading dock the required 30 feet distance needed from a residential district, and will cover the remaining 25 feet of the 2nd-story building, which is currently located beyond the commercial overlay. Because the proposed zoning map amendment is sought only to bring the existing building into conformance and compliance, the proposed action is not intended to result into any new development or enlargement of the site. Community Board 11 held a public hearing on this application on July 19, 2016, and by a vote of 37 in favor with 0 against, 1 abstention, voted to approve this project. On August 17th, the Borough President voted to approve the project. Now, since the time of certification, there were questions asked. 2 questions were asked by commission members. The first one was, what is the current lease term of the supermarket? And this lease extends to February 28, 2028. And the second question was, how was it constructed this way? And the existing building was constructed in or around 1994. The Department of Building records show no record of any new building permits issued between 1997 and 1999. The Department of Buildings inspected the premises and issued violations for work without a permit regarding the new 2-story brick building. Department of Buildings issued permits and approved alteration applications for the building, including approval of HVAC, sprinkler, and fire alarm systems in 1998, as well as a post-approval amendment in 2000. The applicant and current owner of the premises purchased the property on March 4, 2005. The Department of Buildings plan examination was disapproved in 2010, and an application to legalize the building was brought at the BSA in 2011, and in 2013, the BSA application was withdrawn, and the instant rezoning application was commenced at Department of City Planning.
Thanks, Beverly. Questions? Hearing none. Public hearing Wednesday. Thanks.
Beverly is pinch hitting for Stephen Johnson, who's away today. On this next presentation, we're at item number 7, page 242, proposed special permit to facilitate bulk regarding the renovation and enlargement to an existing building. So proposed bulk special permit, excuse me, for 1290 Madison Avenue, and we're on page 242.
This is a private application by Zimac Company for the property located at 1290 Madison Avenue at the southwest corner of East 92nd Street for a special permit pursuant to Section 74711, which is asking for a modification of bulk to facilitate the renovation and enlargement of an existing 6-story plus penthouse residential building with ground floor retail. The renovation and enlargement is for 8 dwelling units and the ground floor retail. The residential building area will increase by 4,585 square feet. As part of the 74711 application, the applicant is seeking 4 waivers: the height limit regulations pursuant to Section 23692, the street wall recess regulations pursuant to Section 99052, the side yard requirements pursuant to Section 3552, and finally, the inner court regulations pursuant to Section 2385. The application was certified on July 11, 2016, and is now back for pre-hearing review. The area map shows that the project site is located in Community District 8 in the Carnegie Hill neighborhood of the Upper East Side. Central Park and Fifth Avenue are to the west of the site, and Park Avenue is to the east. The building was completed in 1898 and is known as the Wellington, and it is located within the expanded Carnegie Hill Historic District, as well as the special Madison Avenue Preservation District. The project site is within an R10 zoning district, the C15 commercial overlay. The maximum permitted FAR for residential is limited to 10, and the maximum commercial FAR is 2. The Wellington has 6 stories plus a penthouse with a building height of 89 feet. Photo 3, we're looking directly west, and you can see the existing penthouse from the street. Photo 4 is looking south with the Wellington on the right of the photo. Photo 5 is looking north with the Wellington behind the tree on the left. The Wellington contains a total floor area of 20,608 square feet, with 17,359 square feet of residential use and 3,249 square feet of use group 6, which is ground floor retail space. The total FAR is 5.6. The existing building is vacant, with the exception of most of the ground floor retail and associated storage space at the cellar. It previously had 10 residential rental units. The proposal would enlarge the footprint of the building to accommodate a new code-compliant stairwell and elevator. This includes being ADA accessible and having 2 fully accessible means of egress. The project would also replace the existing penthouse with a new full 7th floor and a new penthouse on top of that. At 85 feet, the height of the proposed 7th floor would be approximately the same height of the existing penthouse, which is 84 feet. The proposed penthouse would accommodate the new elevator and stairs and provide access to a common rooftop terrace and will be set back on the 7th floor. As mentioned earlier, as part of the 74-711 application, the applicant is seeking to waive 4 sections of the zoning resolution to allow for the enlargement and the restoration of the building. The first waiver is for height limitations for narrow buildings or enlargements which limit the height of buildings with frontages of less than 45 feet. On the waiver plan drawing, this is represented on the map by the dots. The building's height is limited to 80 feet. The proposed 7th floor would be 85 feet, and the proposed total building height of 95 feet to the top of the penthouse exceed the maximum permitted building height. The height of the proposed 7th floor would be approximately the same height as the building's existing penthouse, and the proposed penthouse would be set back. The second waiver is for street wall recess regulations. This is represented on the plan by the purplish X pattern and is only for the 7th floor enlargement. The building's existing facade does not have any recesses along the Madison Avenue frontage, and because the 7th floor facade has been specifically designed to replicate the same materials, fenestration, and symmetry as the lower floors, waiving the required facade recess will make the 7th floor consistent with the facade of the rest of the building. The third waiver is for the modification of side yard requirements, which is represented by the orange lines on the southern side of the building. This waiver is also only for the 7th floor of the building. The increase in side yard noncompliance is necessary in order to allow for the 7th floor to be a straight extrusion consistent with the building's floor plate. The final waiver is for inner court regulations, which requires that the area of an inner court cannot be less than 1,200 square feet, and the minimum dimension of the inner court cannot be less than 30 feet. This is represented by the blue diagonal lines. The proposed project would enlarge the building's core along the western lot line and eliminate a portion of the open area in order to accommodate a code-compliant elevator and stairways. As a result, the proposed project would further increase the degree of noncompliance by further reducing the size of the inner court. The application was certified on July 11th, 2016, and on July 20th, Community Board 8 approved the application unanimously by a vote of 37 in favor with none opposed. We are not in receipt of the Borough President's recommendation as yet.
Thanks, Beverly. Questions? Hearing none. Public hearing on Wednesday.
Let's now go to item number 8, page 285. It's also a Manhattan pre-hearing project with respect to 550 Washington Street and the Special Hudson River Park District. Our presenter is Carolina Hall of the Manhattan office, and commissioners, we do expect Wednesday to, could be a lengthy day for you. So just as a heads up.
Okay, with that.
And we expect basically the rest of the day to be devoted to Carolina, so.
Right. Good afternoon, commissioners. On May 9th, the commission referred two concurrent applications for review, a text amendment by the Department of City Planning to establish a special Hudson River Park district and an application by SJC 33 owner 2015 LLC for a series of actions, including a zoning map amendment and special permits. The public hearing for these applications will be held this Wednesday, August 24th. The commission's hearing will also be a joint hearing with the Hudson River Park Trust, a significant action hearing for the sale of property, the development rights from Pier 40. Together, the proposed actions would
And
facilitate...
excuse me, just so you know, we will be joined up here by a representative of the Hudson River Park Trust Board who will sit behind us so that they can, he or she, I believe, can be,
Receive
in
comments.
essence, hear that part of the trust public hearing.
That's right. Great. So together, the proposed actions would facilitate the redevelopment of the St. John Center at 550 Washington Street, shown here, in Manhattan Community District 2. The site would be developed with a mix of uses over 5 buildings and a public open space. Would include floor area transferred from Pier 40. The proposed transfer of development rights would support the repair and rehabilitation of Pier 40 as well. Pier 40 and St. John Center are located across West Street or Route 9A from one another. Again, Pier 40 over to the west on the Hudson River, and St. John's Center, which is also intersected by West Houston Street. Surrounding neighborhoods are Hudson Square over several blocks to the east, the West Village to the north, and Tribeca to the south. A detailed history of the Hudson River Park was presented to the commission at certification. It's included in the commission's package, so I will try to be a little more concise today. But the Hudson River Park extends along the Hudson River from Chambers Street to 59th Street and includes several park piers with water and boating recreational facilities, as well as inland paths and landscaped areas. The park was established through state legislation, the Hudson River Park Act in 1998, which includes provisions for the park's development, operation, maintenance. The park is now approximately 70% complete, and the Hudson River Park Trust is charged with its continued construction and planning. The Act stipulates specifically what uses are permitted in the park. Residential, manufacturing, hotel, casino uses are prohibited. Some piers are designated for defined park commercial uses and are subject to all city zoning regulations. Generally, all other areas of the park are reserved for active and passive recreational use. Pier 40 is expressly addressed in the Act as a park commercial pier that can be developed with permitted uses, including parking, and that 50% of its footprint be devoted to active and passive recreational space. Pier 40 is a former passenger ship terminal that today includes 5 acres of open-air playing fields, 3 levels of public parking with 1,900 spaces, and the offices of the Trust. The fields are used by numerous local athletic programs and leagues, opening at 6 a.m. and closing at 1 a.m., with 260,000 individual programmed uses each year. As the Act stipulates that the park rely on its own revenues to operate and maintain its 550 acres, revenues from the Pier 40's parking operations are critical, making up 30% of the Trust's operating budget. At the outset of the park's establishment, Pier 40 was identified as a key financial resource. The Pier 40's piles and roof are significantly deteriorated. A 2015 engineering study found that more than half of the 3,500 piles are in either severe condition or needing major repair. And here is an example, of course, of one of the piles. And poor roof conditions have forced closure of parking areas, further limiting revenue. And this is the interior of the pier where a portion has been closed due to roof disrepair. The Act does permit Pier 40 to be used for park commercial use. However, after 2 unsuccessful requests for proposal to develop the pier, and with the support of local elected officials, the state amended the Act in 2013 to allow the sale of unused development rights to properties 1 block east of the park only to the extent permitted by local zoning law. The Act further requires that any revenue generated from the sale of development rights be used first to repair Pier 40. The zoning text amendment proposed by the Department of City Planning would establish the special Hudson River Park District to enable the transfer of floor area from Pier 40 to the receiving and development site, the St. John Center. Pier 40 is located in the Hudson River at West Street and West Houston Street, again shown here. The zoning lot, which includes land underwater, is 1.1 million square feet. The footprint of the pier structure, which is used to determine the allowable floor area, is 672,000 square feet. The zoning lot is currently constructed with 2 stories and 761,000 or close to 762,000 square feet, which is in fact 90,000 square feet more than was originally stated at certification. The Pier 40 survey had been adjusted to account for the additional 90,000 square feet. St. John Center or Terminal at 550 Washington Street is to the east of Pier 40. The 213,000 square foot lot spans 2 partial blocks between Clarkson Street, again West Street, Washington Street, and a line 415 feet north of Spring Street. The single tax lot and zoning lot is bisected by West Houston Street and Map Street. Deducting the area of the street, the zoning lot is 196,000 square feet. The existing building was the southern terminus of the High Line with railroad tracks on the building's 2nd floor, shown here in the historic photo. It is 4 stories, and only the southern portion below West Houston Street is currently occupied. Pier 40 is outlined in blue, and St. John Center is outlined, zoning law is outlined in red. The immediate context is varied with predominantly residential West Village and Tribeca to the north, and largely office and commercial Hudson Square to the east that is actually seeing an increase in residential use as well. The block to the north of Clarkson Street is currently being developed with a 12-story residential project, and ground floor retail lines Hudson and Varick Streets to the east. UPS operates a large distribution facility on the super block just east of the St. John's site. Federal Express has 2 such facilities north of Clarkson Street. Directly abutting the St. John Center to the south is a currently completed Spring Street sanitation garage. The map illustrates the proposed districts over the development site. Currently, the northern portion of the site is in an M15 district, and the southern portion is in an M24 district. Both permit 5 FAR of commercial and manufacturing uses and do not require a maximum height cap. M23 is mapped over Pier 40 and extends to the north and south along Hudson River Park. The 2013 Special Hudson Square District is mapped over several blocks to the east of the development site. The underlying zoning is an M16 district, which permits 10 FAR with inclusionary housing, 12 FAR is permitted. Bulk regulations are consistent with former printing loft buildings with high street walls and maximum heights of up to 290 feet. 430 feet of maximum height is permitted at Duarte Square at 6th Avenue and Canal Street. Buildings in the Special Hudson Square District immediately east of the project area that occupy some of the full blocks are built to densities of between 9 and 16 FAR with heights between 180 and 260 feet. SJC 33 owner 2015 LLC proposes to redevelop the St. John Center with 5 buildings totaling 1.7 million square feet or 8.7 FAR with 1,289,000 square feet of residential, 200,000 square feet of retail and event space, and 222,000 square feet of office or hotel, and an elevated public open space and 772 accessory parking spaces. The program includes 200,000 square feet of floor area proposed to be transferred from Pier 40. In sum, the applicant proposes 328,700 square feet of permanently affordable housing, which will make up 25.5% of the residential floor area in the development. The single zoning lot is separated into 3 sites that comprise the site plan, the north site, which is bounded by Clarkson Street, Washington Street, West Houston, and West Street. The center site, which runs for a distance of 406 feet south from West Houston Street, and then the south site, which butts the sanitation garage at the southern end. The north side is proposed to include 2 buildings. The northwest building is proposed to include 450,000 square feet of residential floor area, 100,000 square feet of retail space in the building's ground, mezzanine, and second floors. The building's main entrance is on Clarkson Street, and retail is accessed from West Houston Street. The building street walls would rise to between 91 and 127 feet, and then taper to 1 tower of 430 feet along the west side of the building and 360 feet on the east portion of the building. There's a rendering here of the Clarkson Street frontage. This is the main lobby at grade to the to the northwest building. The northeast building on Washington Street is 110,000 square feet in area and 175 feet tall. All of the floor area in the building is proposed to be affordable to senior residents with incomes of up to 80% of AMI. Below grade, the applicant proposes a 236-space accessory garage accessed by 22-foot curb cut on West Street. There's also a rendering of this corner on the north side of West Houston Street and Washington Street, showing the corner retail entrance with senior amenity space through the windows above and then elevated open space. So over West Houston Street, the applicant proposes to repurpose the remaining rail structure, which is currently concealed by building, into an elevated garden with 20-foot high arcades on the north and south sides. The 20,750 square foot public open space would be accessible from stair and elevator on 2 corners of West Houston Street and would feature planted areas, seating, and walkways. And this is just a view from West Houston Street on the street level with the rail. This is the center rail above, showing retail on the north side of West Houston Street. The center site is roughly 100,000 square feet in area and extends from West Houston Street for 406 feet south. It is also proposed to include 2 largely residential buildings. The center west building fronts on West Street and would include 300,000 square feet of residential floor area and 33,000 square feet of retail. The main entrance is on West Houston Street. Street walls rise to between 102 and 114 feet, and the highest portion of the building is a 320-foot tower with the remainder of the building of up to 200 feet. The center east building fronts on Washington Street and West Houston Street and includes 429,000 square feet of residential floor area with 27,000 square feet of retail space on West Houston. Street walls are between 188 and 209 feet. The building rises to a maximum of 240 feet. Primary residential access is on Washington Street towards the northernmost corner of the building to concentrate pedestrian circulation away from UPS operations, and then that corner is shown in this rendering. This is the entrance to the lobby space. This is the entrance to the stair and elevator that leads up to the elevated open space, and this is the 20-foot high arcade that flanks the south side of that rail. And now this view is pivoted to the south on Washington Street, showing the street wall of the center east building, the UPS building on the east or on the left side, with the striping condition proposed with the pavement, the sidewalk widening. Let me go back a second. So of the residential floor area on the center site, the applicant proposes 218,700 square feet to be affordable to households with incomes of 60% and 130% AMI. In sum, the affordable floor area would comprise 30% of residential floor area across the entire center site. Separating the 2 center site buildings is a landscape courtyard of 60 feet in width. Between the east and the west buildings, the applicant additionally proposes a cellar level garage with 372 spaces that will be accessed at the southern end of the center east building. To apportion the single lot and introduce circulation to the site plan, the applicant proposes a through block passage separating the center and south sites, allowing access between West and Washington streets. The passageway will be pedestrian and allow pedestrian and vehicular access with 2 curb cuts of 22 feet. And includes access to lobby entrances to the Center East building, the Center West building, as well as access to the South building. The south side is 40,000 square feet in area and borders the Department of Sanitation garage to the south. The building is proposed to include 222,000 square feet of hotel or office space and 40,000 square feet of retail or event space. A hotel on the site would rise to a maximum of 240 feet on a low, full footprint building base. An office building would likely be lower with larger floor plates throughout. The envelope has been designed to allow both. On the ground floor level, the commercial building is separated from the sanitation garage by a service alley that will be used for loading and valet access to the south side parking garage. The cellar level accessory garage with 164 spaces would be accessed from a 22-foot curb cut on West Street. The Department of City Planning proposes an amendment to the zoning resolution to establish Article 8, Chapter 9 of the Special Hudson River Park District, which would encompass Pier 40 as a granting site and St. John Center as a receiving site. The Special Hudson River Park District aims to facilitate the repair, rehabilitation, and maintenance and development of the park through the transfer of development rights within the Special Hudson River Park District, and also to promote an appropriate range of uses that complements the Hudson River Park, and to the extent housing is included, to serve residents of varied income levels. The text includes a special permit under proposed section 8921, which enables the commission to permit the transfer of floor area from area A1, Pier 40, to the St. John Center A2, as well as to modify bulk regulations on the receiving site. The proposed text anticipates that with this special permit, the owner of the receiving site may seek a zoning map amendment to allow additional uses or increased density. The proposed text conditions the effectiveness of the new zoning districts on the special permit. So without the use of the special permit, the new zoning districts would not apply. There are also requirements and conditions of the special permit. The Hudson River Park Trust has submitted a letter to the commission identifying improvements associated with the transferred floor area. On the receiving site, transferred floor area is limited to 20% of the underlying floor area permitted. The granting site and park improvements must be in the same community district or within 1/2 mile of the receiving site. And very significantly, if the development on the receiving site includes residential floor area, the program must include affordable housing in accordance with mandatory inclusionary housing. The grant of the special permit is contingent on a set of findings with respect to the furtherance of the Hudson River Park's repair, maintenance, and development, and on the receiving site, an improved site plan and building design, complementary uses, provision of light and air to surrounding streets, the appropriateness of bulk modifications in relation to park improvements, and the ability of the project to support the objectives of the inclusionary housing program. The private applicant also proposes several actions to develop the St. John Center. The St. John Center is currently in 2 zoning districts, again, M15 above West Houston Street and M24 to the south. The zoning over Pier 40, M23 is not proposed to be changed. The proposed zoning map amendment would include St. John Center in 3 zoning districts, C64 on the north site, which permits an FAR of 10, C63 on the center site, which permits 7.52 FAR, and M15 with 5 FAR on the south site. Both the St. John Center and Pier 40 would be mapped in the newly created Special Hudson River Park District to designate the granting and receiving sites and make them eligible for the special permit for transfer of floor area. On the St. John Center site, the zoning districts are intended to respond to the context. The highest density residential district is mapped near as a concentration of residential uses. To the north, the center site is the C63 designation, which also permits residential use but graduates down in density to the 5 FAR M15 district. Absent the floor area from the Hudson River Park, the aggregate density on the site would be 7.7 FAR. This density is consistent with Special Tribeca Mixed Use District to the south, and is proposed to include, with the transferred floor area, would be 8.7 FAR, which is less than the 12 FAR permitted in Hudson Square. The private applicant seeks the new special permit in the Special Hudson River Park District to transfer 200,000 square feet from Pier 40 to St. John Center. Pier 40 is zoned as an M23 district with 2 FAR and 1.3 million square feet of floor area, of which 583,000 square feet remain unused. 200,000 square feet constitutes 13.2% of the floor area permitted by the underlying district regulations. The transfer floor area would enable improvements to Pier 40, in support of which, of course, the trust has submitted a letter to the commission. In the proposed C64, C63, and M15 districts, all building heights are regulated by the sky exposure plane. On all three sites, the proposed building envelopes penetrate, this sample waiver section is cut looking west, with the north site at the right end of the slide closest to West Street. The building's highest projections require waiver to allow heights of 430 feet, 360 feet, 320 feet on the center site, and up to 240 feet on the south site, which is actually shown in this section, which is cut closer to Washington Street. C64, C63, and M15 districts all permit a maximum base height of 85 feet. Adjacent Special Hudson Square district regulations allow street walls of up to 150 feet. The north side is proposed to include a street wall of up to 129 feet, the center up to 209 feet, and the south up to 112 feet. The center site is proposed to be zoned in a C63 district, where height factor regulations consider floor area, building height, open space to produce smaller footprints, and taller buildings. The center site is proposed to be constructed with 7.52 FAR plus a transferred floor area. Based on this proposed floor area, height factor calculations would permit a maximum coverage of 56,000 square feet, whereas what's proposed is a coverage of 67,000 square feet. The south site building, proposed again in the M15 district, is designed not to include a 40-foot rear yard that would be required in the middle of the block. The rear yard requirement is suitable for a typical street context to provide separation from neighboring properties. However, given the site plan here, this rear yard is not provided. Typically, special permits that are not vested expire after 4 years. Given the size and complexity of the development, existing site conditions that will require substantial work before a first foundation is constructed, as well as current tenancies on the site, the applicant asks that the commission grant the special permit for a period of 10 years. The applicant requests 3 special permits pursuant to Manhattan Core regulations for 3 accessory parking facilities of a total of 772 spaces, a 236 space garage accessed by a 22-foot curb cut on West Street, a 372 space garage accessed by a curb cut off of the 3-block passage on the center site, and a 164 space garage on the south side, also accessed by a 22-foot curb cut on West Street. The private applicant seeks 3 authorizations pursuant to Section 3441 to allow curb cuts on West Street, a wide street, which are prohibited by Manhattan Core parking regulations. The DEIS identified significant adverse impacts with respect to vehicular traffic, open space, construction, air quality, and noise. The traffic analysis identified potential for significant adverse impacts at up to 11 intersections for the proposed project. Unmitigated impacts remain up to 5 locations. Any additional mitigation is being explored in consultation with the Department of Transportation. The proposed actions would reduce total and active open space ratio. Potential mitigation measures are being explored now in coordination with Department of Parks and Recreation. Equally, the potential for construction, air quality, and noise will be further explored between now and the final EIS. On July 21st, Manhattan Community Board 2 voted 36 in favor and 1 abstaining to adopt a resolution recommending approval with conditions of the text amendment by the Department of City Planning and by the private applicant, the zoning map amendment, the special Hudson River Park special permit, and curb cut authorizations, and the disapproval with conditions of the 3 parking special permits. In his letter to the commission, the community board discussed its conditions. With regard to site planning and design, the community board recommended incorporating a prolongation of King Street and Charlton Street into the site plan, widening Washington Street by recessing the proposed buildings west into the site, and placing the density and height proposed for the north site over the center site. With respect to open space, the community board recommended retaining just 1 rail bed for the proposed open space over West Houston Street, opening the center site courtyard to public access and including indoor public recreational space within the development, such as a gym or swimming pool. With respect to uses, the community board recommended limiting retail establishments to 10,000 square feet, with the exception of the supermarket, and capping eating and drinking establishments to 5,000 square feet. With regard to affordable housing, the community board asked that 20% of floor area proposed for 130% AMI be set at 100% AMI to expand eligibility. And that no more than 70 senior affordable units be studios, and that up to 50% of units be offered at 100% AMI. With regard to parking, the community board recommended a maximum 381 spaces, and this community board expressed support of the transfer of floor area from Pier 40, provide an additional $50 million is committed in public funding for emergency repairs to the pier, that no additional development rights be transferred for the park to Community District 2, and the designation of the South Village Historic District be secured. Additionally, the community board requested a study by DOT of traffic and pedestrian improvements focusing on Barrack Street, Houston Street, and Spring Street, and also suggested several crossing signage and signal timing measures on streets around the development site. The community board also asked that funding be provided to increase seat capacity at a community board 2 school. On August 17th, the borough president submitted a resolution recommending approval of the north side garage and West Street curb cuts, approval with conditions of the text amendment to establish the special Hudson River Park District, conditional disapproval of the zoning map amendment and special permit to transfer floor area, and the disapproval of the remaining 2 garage special permits. In her consideration, the borough president asked that the affordable floor area make up at least 30% rather than 25% of residential floor area and be distributed equally across both buildings on the center site, and that senior affordable building consists of more one-bedroom units than studio units. The borough president asked that stores be limited to 10,000 square feet in area, and that Houston, Clarkson, and Washington streets require 1 establishment per 25 feet of frontage. With regard to open space, the recommendations include that only the center rail be retained as part of the elevated open space, and that all areas of public access are approved with appropriate lighting, seating, planting, and signage. The borough president recommends disapproval of the center site garages and the cellar space be instead used for indoor recreational space or a cultural facility. Additionally, the borough president asked for a more frequent M20 bus service and a drop-off area at the affordable senior building. I just want to make 2 points of clarification. At certification, Commissioner Levin had asked about the integration of Pier 40 parking spaces into the parking analysis, and I'd mistakenly said that so long as they're DCA licensed, that they would have been included, but of course the study only considers the study period, which is 2005 to 2015, and those spaces would have predated that. So I wanted to correct myself. And the commission had also asked about projects that have previously been granted special permits of 10 years, recent projects rather than the default 4 years, and those projects include the Riverside Center, NYU expansion, Hallett's Point, Astoria Cove, and then the Domino site as well in Brooklyn.
Thank you very much, Carolina. That was tour de force. Questions for Carolina? Vice Chairman Knuckles.
Very good presentation, Charlie. I heard the recommendation of the community board regarding the number of affordable units. My question is approximately how much will 328,000 square feet of affordable housing yield, approximately?
How many units? I believe for the purposes of the EIS, it's 487 units. I believe that's
okay.
as currently proposed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dweck.
Beautiful presentation. Can you repeat that? The transfer of floor area from the Hudson River Park Trust, who determines the pricing on that?
I'm sorry. That was subject to an appraisal, and the trust will be here on Wednesday if there are questions specifically about the appraisal.
They'll be in the audience, or they'll be?
They will testify.
They'll testify. Okay, fantastic.
Commissioner Efron.
Caroline, I want to add my congratulations.
thank
That was
you.
beautiful. I hope the applicant will be prepared to speak to both the Borough President and the Community Board recommendations, specifically around the size of the senior units, safe pedestrian passage, accessible public space at grade, the extent of the parking, the 772 units, and why it seems as if the affordable units are segregated into a building, which seems completely the opposite of what at least we have discussed here as the goal of affordable housing to be scattered throughout residential and have at least similar access to views as the other, and as well as the size of retail. And I just can't help but think that while it is such a great project to help a park pier that is really accessible by foot to the neighborhood and is such a lively part of its recreational activity, the street wall, which is double the 85 norm over there, seems as if it is really setting up a non-pedestrian feel to the entire project. So I just hope the applicant will speak to how it'll integrate itself into the neighborhood in a way that seems appropriate to the very low-scale pedestrian aspect, even while retaining the height to get the affordable housing and the market rate housing.
Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, thank you. You've been working hard, clearly. I had a question. There was a mention that the parking, if approved, would exhaust the ratio. Is that the case here?
That's right, the 772 spaces assumes 20% of all, that would hit the 20% kind of cap.
So I guess no more special permits.
For this study area.
Yeah, for this.
Based on this study area.
And where are you trying to create pedestrian activity? I mean, you know, there's a lot of ground floor space, and it's hard to determine sort of where the bulk of what you'd like to see, you know, the retail activity we'd like to see is happening, and where sort of pedestrians will ultimately flow.
Okay.
Could you speak
Well,
to that?
The applicant will certainly speak to that on Wednesday, but the main intention has been to fortify the east-west streets that already exist. So of course we know that West Houston Street is already a major corridor, and that's actually the corridor that's used most frequently to get to Pier 40. So the applicant has located retail on both the south and the north sides of West Houston Street. Clarkson Street is another existing street that continues and would, as shown, continue through the site. So there would be retail located that would wrap Washington Street with the main entrance to the northwest building located on Clarkson Street. And then retail would continue to wrap on this portion of West Street. It's hard to tell here, actually, let me go to plan. It would actually, let me see, I may have a ground floor plan. Yeah. So this shows retail located along West Houston Street on both sides, on the corner of Clarkson Street and West Street, and then on a good portion of West Street and West Houston. And again, this is the West Houston piece. Generally, Washington Street, because of UPS operations, it's been very intentional to locate the lobby and entrance to the Center East building at the northernmost portion of that corner in order to prevent a lot of pedestrian activity across the street from the UPS building, just to minimize conflicts.
Mm-hmm. And there's some concern about along Houston, if we're trying to create sort of this corridor along Houston, the shadows and creating an environment underneath those railways that's appealing. I hope that the applicants can speak to that.
Okay.
Can I keep on going? A few more questions. Did the residential study area, there were some concerns about the open space. Did it include Hudson River Park? I wasn't.
It does include Hudson River Park, but only the portion of the park that falls within the study area. So it doesn't consider that the park continues to the north and south.
Yeah, okay. And then I was hoping that the applicant could speak to why they need 772 spaces. You know, I'm aware of really significant underutilization of parking lots that are associated with urban retail. You know, and projects that we can point to here in New York and elsewhere, where, you know, we have vacant parking lots that were assumed to be full. I mean, East River Plaza is one of them. I think about, you know, Target in Washington DC, which had a ratio of 2 to 1,000, and is 25% utilized, and the city spent, you know, $40 million on that project. That's the kind of thing I'd like to understand. You know, are they informed by sort of what's happening in retail, and is that, you know, and that in dense environments like this, we actually don't need that kind of parking to be successful. And I think that's it for now.
Commissioner Efron.
I just had a question about the 10-year permit. Are there milestones being proposed for the 10-year permit? And then my other question is whether the payment goes to the park regardless of the permit. In other words, does that begin does the payment to the park start in the beginning, or does it come at the end, or is it
Sure.
paced over time?
Sure, I'll start with that. So the applicant, the developer, and the trust have entered into a payment agreement that is included in the MOU, and the payment is largely upfront. It's actually staggered over time, but it's been staggered in a way in which it would keep pace with development, ensuring that that it would need to be maintained in order for the development to get its building permits and its certificates of occupancy.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
So let's assume there's some reason why it doesn't go ahead. The park, in theory, could be without those rights to sell, but they might not receive the full payment?
So, and the park will be able to best address this, but there is, so the way that the payments are written out right now, they're on a timed schedule and assume certain approvals throughout the process. So there is money that would be paid to the park upfront, and again, they will speak to the terms of that payment, but I will let them address what happens if the development gets to a certain point and circumstances change and that floor area is not utilized. But of course, the way the text is written is that in order to develop this program, and this once a special permit is triggered, this becomes the only program that can be developed on the site, absent, of course, the option of constructing pursuant to today's manufacturing zoning districts. But this really becomes the only program that can be utilized, that can be developed, in which case that full amount is required. So the two have been tied very, very closely together, but the trust can certainly speak to the finer points of those terms.
And then just my other question was whether there are thresholds for the 10 years. In other words, do they have to accomplish a certain amount by year 4?
There is, so in order to activate to activate the special permits, there's nothing that requires them to do anything in advance. Once they have their foundations in and they begin construction, that's essentially the point at which their permits are triggered.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Edie, and then Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. Just a quick question as to, I mean, it's a large development, obviously, and had the developer talked about the phasing in terms of which blocks they think they'd begin with and how they would progress with the development?
The approvals do not require a particular phasing sequence.
Right.
The applicant had originally expected to construct from north to south, but that may change. So the way the approvals, the way the special permits are written right now, there's nothing that requires a particular sequence. The center site, it's very likely that the center site may be constructed first.
Oh, okay. I'm sure they'll be able to speak more to that
Yes.
Wednesday. Thank you.
Commissioner Marin.
Commissioner, you actually asked a question I was gonna ask. I was trying to tie it into Commissioner Efron's question to see how the two play together.
Perfectly appropriate questions for the applicant team and for the trust on Wednesday. So. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, I'm sorry, another quick clarification. It was stated that, with the 1586 units, that, there would be 317 spaces as of right, which is about 20%, right? It is 20%. That's assuming that all of those units are market rate. If we were to remove and I've seen different unit counts in different places, but I found 476, we would be looking at much lower percentage, 20% of really almost a little over 1,000. So we would be dealing with lower parking ratio and set aside. Is that correct?
That's right. So based on the residential program on the unit count, and the unit count, of course, is prepared for purposes of the EIS. It assumes certain unit sizes, and so based on that, it yields 1,586,476, of which would be affordable. If you were to discount that for the purposes of generating parking spaces, that would reduce the number. But just to clarify the as of right, if you were to take the program as a whole for the north, center, and south sites, based on the based on the residential, on the commercial floor area proposed, it would yield a certain number of parking spaces. But given the size of the site and that it is a single zoning lot, the text actually require or mandates that cap becomes 225 spaces. So that is the effective maximum.
Which, actually, it's interesting, because if we remove those 476 units, we're at 222 spaces, which is right around that
Right,
number.
and that's just considering the residential units.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's true. Thank you.
Any other questions for Carolina? Really well done, Carolina. Thank you very much. Maybe the applicant team do as well on Wednesday.
So Carolina's stamina will continue to be on display as she...
Carolina's Day.
Exactly. We're on item number 9, Manhattan non-ULURP. Presentation is a follow-up from the previous discussion regarding comments on the Empire State Development General Project Plan for the Women's Building located in Community District 4 in Manhattan.
Thank you, Commissioners. Empire State Development proposes a general project plan and design guidelines for the long-term lease and redevelopment of the former Bayview Women's Correctional Facility as the Women's Building at 550 West 20th Street in West Chelsea, Manhattan Community District 4. The GPP requires override of several New York City zoning regulations and is therefore subject to Commission review. And the Commission saw this presentation 2 weeks ago, and this is a refresher and also has a draft comment letter. Okay, so the former Bayview Correctional Facility is located on the corner of 11th Avenue and West 20th Street and comprises 2 buildings, the Western Main Building and the Eastern Laundry Facility Building. The site is under the ownership of the New York State Urban Development Corporation, doing business as Empire State Development. Again, these photos show the main building, the 8-story main building at the corner of 20th Street and 11th Avenue, and then this is the mid-block portion showing the lower portions of the main building, and then separate of that is, in the mid-block, is a 6-story laundry facility on West 20th Street. The current buildings, which are eligible for listing on the state and national historic registers, were constructed in 1931 as a Siemens YMCA and were transferred to the state in 1974 as a correctional facility. After Hurricane Sandy, the facility was decommissioned by the state, and an RFP was issued for its purchase or long-term lease and adaptive reuse in May 2014. The RFP requires adaptive reuse of as much of the site as possible, the inclusion of some community facility use, and prohibits residential use. In the spring of 2015, ESD signed an MOU with the Novo Foundation, women's rights advocacy organization, to redevelop the site as the Women's Building. The site is a 15,800 square foot zoning lot with 190 feet of frontage on West 20th Street and 99 feet of frontage on 11th Avenue. It is occupied again by the two buildings. On the western site, the main building. On the eastern site, the laundry facility. The site is split in two zoning districts. The entire main building is in a C63 subarea D district, and the laundry facility is diagonally split, with the western portion in the C63 subarea D and the eastern portion C62 subarea E. The site plan more clearly shows the split zoning lot condition of the laundry facility building, and this is the larger zoning lot with the main building. C63 subarea D permits up to 7.5 FAR of residential commercial floor area. That includes 2.5 FAR from the Highline Transfer Corridor, or up to 1.25 FAR floor area from using the inclusionary housing program. C62 subarea E permits up to 6 FAR, which includes 1 FAR of floor area from the Highline Transfer Corridor. The proposal involves the rehabilitation of the main building and the demolition of the laundry facility, to be replaced with a new approximately 16-story, 56,000 square foot building segment on its site. The entire facility will host a dozen or more women-focused organizations and provide groups with resources to co-locate, office space, share facilities for lectures, conferences, performances, and art display. In total, the site will include 118,000 square feet of floor area, composed of approximately 42,000 gross square feet of office space for nonprofits, 9,000 square feet of for-profit office space, 6,000 square foot commercial restaurant and cafe, as well as several spaces accessory to the community facility programming. The GPP and design guidelines prepared by ESD represent the maximum envelope within which the site will be designed. The envelope expects that the main building will remain as it currently is. The laundry facility will be replaced with a 190-foot building that sets back at the street line by 15 feet at a base height of 120 feet. The building is intended to also occupy the rear yard up to 30 feet, setback for a depth of 10.5 feet, then rise to 75 and setback to a depth of 15 feet. The redevelopment and programming of the site require the override of floor area, height and setback, rear yard, permitted use, and sign regulations. The design guidelines in the GPP prohibit residential and transient hotel uses on the zoning lot. The lease and GPP also stipulate that the tenant demonstrate that no more than 25% of the space is dedicated to for-profit use. The remainder will be dedicated to non-for-profit and community facility uses. ESD proposes to apply uniform 7.5 FAR across the entire zoning lot. In the C63 subarea D district, the override would allow an increase of floor area above a base FAR to the maximum 7.5 without the use of Highline Transfer Corridor or inclusionary housing floor area. In the C62 subarea E district, the override would permit an increase of above the 5 FAR to an increase of, to an FAR of 7.5, which is above the 6 permitted by zoning. The height and setback overrides in the laundry facility segment will allow full utilization of the 7.5 FAR, will leave the main building intact with no overbuild on the corner structure. In the C63 subarea D district, the maximum base height permitted is 90 feet. The maximum base height proposed is 120 feet. And the tower also does not include tower tapering in the upper 40 feet. The C62 subdistrict E C62 subdistrict E district, the maximum base height permitted is 105 feet, with 120 feet is proposed. The maximum building height permitted is 120 feet, and 190-foot building is proposed. The design guidelines additionally modify certain obstruction regulations for encroachments on the roof. Rear yard regulations are also proposed to be overridden rather than a rear yard of 20 feet above a base of 23, a rear yard of 20 feet in depth above a base of 23 feet. Rear yards of between 0 and 15 feet are proposed for the height of the building. The project proposes uses that support the women's building nonprofit program, including a gym and wellness center, outdoor space, and a greenhouse for plant cultivation on the roof. Finally, sign regulations would be overridden to allow a series of banner signs on West 20th Street, displaying the names of organizations occupying the building, and a replica historic sign would also be located on 11th Avenue. In order to accommodate these signs, the 500 square foot cap for non-illuminated signs would be modified to allow 590 square feet on the West 20th Street frontage, and signs would be permitted to project by 4 feet at a height of 87 feet rather than 18 inches at a height of 40 feet. The commission asked whether a new public review would be required if this developer was ultimately not the developer to construct this site. I was told that ESD would have to take a new developer back to its board for approval, which would require a new public comment period and consideration by the commission. The commission also received 2 items in your packages. The first is a draft letter reflecting the commission's comments on the project 2 weeks ago. The commission encourages ESD to analyze the potential for locating floor area above the main building and reducing the proposed height of the new building over the laundry facility, where zoning specifically provides for a lower transition to the east. And the commission also received a letter from Community Board 4 with its comments. The letter expresses support of the overrides for base height and rear yard obstructions and objection to overrides for open uses on the roof, the rooftop greenhouse, and sign regulation waivers. The Community Board asks for a modification of height waivers to reduce the new building to a maximum height of 150 feet rather than 190 feet proposed. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Carolina. I will also say, although she's not here, Anna Levin did review the letter draft letter that Carolina proposes the commission send to ESD, and thought it was really good. Comments on the letter or anything else?
Question.
Commissioner Dweck.
Sorry. Question on the signage. How many signs would there be?
There's no cap on the number of banner signs that are proposed for West 20th Street, but the overall area could be no more than 590 feet.
590 square feet, and it would be 4-foot letters, 4-foot high letters, is that the?
It would be, so they would be, rather than, so typically they'd be permitted to
18 inches?
be located at a height,
Of 40
at a
feet?
height of 40 feet and then project outwards for a maximum of 18 inches. And what's proposed is that they project by 4 feet at a height of 87 feet. But that modification is just for one side. Okay, so that modification is sought, but as I'm told, would apply on 11th Avenue. So the 500 to 590 foot total square footage would apply on West 20th Street, but I'm told that the projection and height modification would apply on 11th Avenue for that single sign that's proposed, the historic sign.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to Carolina? Hearing none, I will ask for your assent to send a comment letter to ESD in accordance with the draft that you have all seen. May I ask for your assent? Unanimous. Well done, Carolina.
Thank you.
So let's now advance to the future votes for Wednesday. Just want to note that 86-13 Leverett Boulevard, which is a special permit, has been withdrawn. Staff have prepared favorable resolutions for the following: the Rockaway Beach Boulevard rezoning to facilitate a hotel in the Rockaway Park neighborhood of Queens, the Queens District Attorney office space at 126-06 Queens Boulevard. You have a special hillsides preservation district authorization to facilitate a mixed-use building. You have the special South Richmond Development District certification to subdivide one zoning lot into 2 to facilitate residential use on Downs Avenue in Staten Island. And we have the proposed City Coastal Commission CAPA rule change to update and clarify the procedures for the review of local, state, and federal projects or actions for consistency with the policies set forth in the New York City Waterfront Revitalization Program. Moving on to September 7th, which is hard to believe that we're talking about September already. We have 95 Horatio Street, which is a proposed modification to restrictive declaration to remove use restrictions and marketing requirements for this property. You received a letter in your package that Sylvia will walk us through.
So included as part of your weekend packages is a letter from the applicant's attorney addressing some of the issues raised at the last review session. So one, the applicant stated that the equipment that was essential to meatpacking uses was removed and taken away by the previous tenant, Weishel Beef, when they relocated to their new location in the co-op facility. And secondly, to address the community board's concern about late-night activities, the applicant is modifying its land use application to make sure that the prohibition on use group 12A, eating and drinking establishments with dancing, remains in the deck. And thirdly, the applicant expressed its commitment to continue working with the council member and community board to memorialize other commitments, including limitation on hours of operation at 95 Horatio Street, and ensuring that 91 Horatio Street space will only be leased to not-for-profit cultural, educational, and arts tenants. The commission also asked a question about whether the meatpacking bid is currently working with businesses within the bid to ameliorate any adverse impacts on the local residential community. From the conversation with the bid, staff learned that while the bid does not have any established program in that regard, it does have a close working relationship with the local precinct. So it's our understanding that if issues arise or if the bid receives any complaints, it will work with businesses and residents and public safety officers to resolve the issue.
Commissioner Efron.
I know it's a bad joke to say, I'm hoping I'm not beating a cow to death in this case, but it does seem that if the landlord had an obligation to market the space to meet, it had an obligation to make sure when the tenant left that it left the equipment. But I understand that the community is satisfied with the resolution, particularly if it limits the hours of eating and drinking, and therefore I am too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Sylvia? Okay, thanks, Sylvia.
Thanks.
Commissioners, staff will be preparing a favorable report as modified based on the discussion several weeks ago for 217 West 29th Street, which involves a proposed special permit and zoning text amendment to facilitate retail use and accessory parking. The next item is 248 Lafayette Street, which is a proposed special permit to modify use regulations within property located in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District extension. And then moving right along, we have 141 Willoughby Street, which involves a series of land use actions to facilitate a project in Brooklyn. And Alex is our presenter, and Commissioner Edie is recused.
Good afternoon. In response to questions and comments raised at the July 27th public hearing and the subsequent post-hearing review sessions, the private applicant, EDC, HPD, and SCA have all submitted letters, which you should have received in your weekend package or included today. HPD provided a chart of the Community District 2 specific household applications via the Housing Connect application platform, indicating AMIs and bedroom counts. The applicant and EDC sent a letter discussing the ongoing communications with local cultural institution, the potential for including lower AMIs in senior-specific housing, and discussed the layout constraints for the inclusion of a school in the base of the proposed development. And finally, SCA provided its discussion on the city's broader commitment to providing additional school capacity for school districts 13 and 15. As stated during ULURP, the proposed project area and development are not an ideal location for the school, and while the School Construction Authority demonstrates they are deeply committed to meeting ongoing school capacity needs, continues to seek appropriate sites around downtown Brooklyn. For example, in contrast to the publicly announced 362 Skirmerhorn site, which is being proposed for redevelopment, this proposed project site at 141 Willoughby is not an ideal location, given some of the comments proposed given in the letter, including the adjacent school capacity at PS 287, PS 67 are both significantly under capacity at 58% and 74% respectively. There's a need for a double-height gym or auditorium, which would further increase floor heights. The relatively small and irregular site would leave a floor plate of approximately 16,000 gross square feet, which would require a school spanning 6 floors or more. The number of stories would make for an inefficient circulation, make monitoring of stairwells difficult, and as stated in the letter, put emergency evacuations at a disadvantage. There is little or no room for an outdoor play area and the required separate mechanicals, which could result in an unrealistic residential floor plate of approximately 3,400 gross square feet. And the same issues apply to the site acting as a school annex. As mentioned before, the closest schools, 287 and 67, are both under capacity, so acting as a school annex may not be appropriate. While it may be possible to include cultural facility space within the proposed development, it should be noted that the city has provided significant investment for the concentration of cultural space within the Brooklyn Cultural District itself, which is approximately 5 blocks to the southeast. On the specific Cultural Museum of African Art, I actually went out a couple of weeks ago to their site. They have an impressive collection of over 2,500 historic artifacts. And after touring the facility, they actually said that their ideal location would actually be here at 22 Reade Street, given the proximity to the burial ground. And so maybe I can put that out into the ether. It should be noted that any additional uses in the base of the building, whether they be a school or a cultural facility, would eat into the proposed office space program, effectively negating one of the stated intentions of this application, which is to provide a significant amount of commercial space. Finally, department staff discussed the borough president's recommendations and found any changes to the rezoning boundary or new special permits to be out of scope of the proposed actions, and that the City Planning Commission continues to reserve its ability to review this single application with discretion based on its unique land uses, form, envelope, and site-specific conditions, without setting up any precedent for any area-wide as-of-right applicability.
Questions for Alex? Commissioner Dweck.
Just a comment, I was satisfied by the SCA's letter as to the school placement. I thought it was very informative. And I was happy to note that the applicant is looking at providing deeper AMI for senior housing, and at the same time is in discussions with the Museum of African Art. And about their placement at 22 Reade Street, I have no comment, but certainly we can entertain it, I'm sure. Thank you.
Who would have thought this would be a desirable building for anybody? Any other questions for Alex? Thanks, Alex.
All right, thank you.
And staff will be preparing favorable reports for the Agency for Children's Services. That was presented earlier today at 1775 Grand Concourse. And we have the Westchester Square Branch Library. Commissioner Edie is also recused on that one. And last but not least, we have the proposed East 147th Street rezoning. We would recommend a favorable report without modification. And we have the Lambert Houses redevelopment proposal, which is a series of land use actions to facilitate primarily affordable housing in the Bronx.
Any other questions? Madam Secretary, is there anything else to come before us today?
No, Mr. Chairman.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.